You should check out the Starbucks Roastery here in Tokyo.
Oh?
It's a 4-floor Starbucks. They have the whole building. It's a humongous building. If you want coffee and a very expensive lunch, it's kind of fun.
That's what I always think to myself. I want coffee and a very expensive lunch.
Actually, they're not that bad. My wife kept saying, stop gawking at the prices. Welcome to My Hill to Die On, Episode 4.
Everyone has things that they're passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can get just one more person
to join us on our hill to die on.
All right, so I have an experience that I don't want you to die on.
I think I heard bits and pieces of this, but I do want to hear what happened.
Actually, I was curious because, we did run into each other the other day at school, and I pulled my phone out, and I was wondering what you thought, if you saw it.
Well, I heard something had happened, and you ended up with an older phone?
Mm-hmm. Just soon after we recorded the last one, my family and I went to the Kawagoe Aquatic Park.
Oh, no.
It's just a big public swimming area. Fairly reasonable price, so it's kind of nice. We found the place where we were going to set up our little camp. We have one of those tiny tents. The kids were pretty hot, so we said, hey, you're already wearing your swimsuit, just go run in, come out, and then we'll get all back together again and then go into the bigger pool because we were parked next to a smaller one. So they went in. I was getting my stuff ready. I gave my wife my keys, but I didn't give my wife my phone. I left it in my swimsuit pocket and then went into the pool with my phone in my pocket. Now, with my iPhone 7, I have been very pleased with it. One of the biggest selling features for me at the time, there was a bunch of reasons why I liked the iPhone 7. It had Suica built in finally for Japan, which is our mobile transit system thing, but it was slightly waterproof, which was great because as a cross-country coach, I stand out in the rain often with my phone, timing things or videoing things.
Sorry, I just know that slightly waterproof is not jump into the pool waterproof.
Well, here's the thing. Slightly waterproof says on Apple's website, you can go into, it says 3 feet for half an hour, I think.
3 feet for half an hour. How long were you in the pool?
5 minutes for not 3 feet. Oh, I think it says 1 meter. 1 meter for half an hour. 1 meter for 30 minutes. And I was in, it was in my pocket. I was standing. And the water just covers my pocket. So maybe I got to 20 centimeters, not deep.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in there for 2 to 5 minutes, just calling my daughters to come out. So that's what I did. I had dunked my phone before. So I was like, this won't be a problem. Because it had gotten dunked by mistake in the past. I don't go around doing it on purpose. But I was like, okay, this was a mistake. Oh, but it's fine. My phone should be able to handle this. I dried it off, put it away, didn't think twice. I didn't take it out the rest of the time we were there. I left it in the bag. Didn't use it much that evening either. Must have set it down. In the morning, I turned it on and you could see the water in the screen.
Oof.
And I was like, oh my goodness, what's this? Water in the screen. So I immediately shut it off, set it on the windowsill to dry, and left it there for 3 days. And then started it up again on Sunday.
So you didn't do the rice thing?
I didn't do the rice thing. And actually, Apple doesn't recommend that anymore.
Really?
I called up Apple on Sunday because I booted it up again and there was still some damage. I could see it. And Apple said, oh yeah, it's good you didn't do rice. We don't recommend rice anymore because rice can get into the lightning port and stuff.
Yeah.
So actually, the lady I called on Sunday sent me an article, said, you're supposed to just leave it in a dry area, and which I had done. So I was like, oh, great. I did that for 3 days. No problem. So, but the lady on the phone was in Australia and she didn't know how much it was going to be to replace it. So I was a little concerned. She said it's either going to be 4 mon, about $400, or it will be 9 mon, or $900. She's like, I'm not sure which one it'll be. But I was like, well, either one is too much. So
yeah, either one is just get a new phone.
Well, and I'm already planning on it, right? Because this is the 3rd year with this phone already, and the new phones are coming out in 2 months.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to buy a new phone.
Yeah, I'm sitting here with my 6S, so yeah, I know the plan of maybe I should get a new phone.
Oh, so she actually said, oh, well, there's an appointment this afternoon if you want to go to Apple this afternoon. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go to the store and see what they say. So the guy did say, yep, 4 mon, he said, which was, I was pleased that it was at least 4 mon. But yeah, I was not doing it for 4 mon. It's too much. With the fact that I have extra phones around my house, that the new phones are coming out in 2 months, yeah, it's not worth it. I said, no thanks. And I left. One of the nice things was on the way out, I happened to be wearing my Welcome to Macintosh podcast shirt, the one with the colorful Mac on it. So a guy came up and said, I remember those computers. So that was kind of nice. I talked to him for a little bit on my way out. So in these intervening 3 days, I was like, oh, wow, I got to have something. So I already have, because again, podcasts are too much in my life. I already have a phone that's dedicated with Overcast on it to listen to podcasts, set up to sync to my account and everything. So I took that phone and I started using it. That phone is a 5S locked to SoftBank still. It's not unlocked, so I can't stick my SIM card in it. And SoftBank won't unlock iPhone 5Ss. It's the laws in Japan changed just prior to the 6S being launched. And when the 6S being launched, the laws stated that the carriers had to unlock the cell phones from then on. So from the 6S, they unlocked them, but from the 5S, they weren't forced to, and they never chose to. So I started using that for quite a while. But it was quite interesting to realize what apps I had to have installed on that phone. It was an interesting thing to see, like, oh, I have to have this app. And it was surprising to me, a few of the apps that I have to have installed are on the Japanese store. And I still decided not to install them because I didn't want to go through the rigmarole of logging into the Japanese store, installing those apps, logging out, logging back into the American store. I didn't want to go through that rigmarole. So a few of them I did not install still. But the apps that I had to have installed, it was quite an interesting collection.
So my question then is, when you end up getting a new phone, what are the top apps that you have to have then?
Right. So, of course, Overcast was already installed on the phone, which was its existence. Even that first evening when I had my phone off, I reached for this phone because of the fact that Overcast was installed on it. So that is the first app that has to be there. Pretty quickly, I realized I had to have 1Password installed on the phone since I don't remember all my passwords. Oh, actually, the biggest reason was because I was starting to log into Google, and I have Google two-factor authentication turned on, and the two-factor codes come through 1Password.
1Password, yeah.
So I had to have 1Password installed pretty quickly. I installed OmniFocus next. The apps are still in the order I installed them on the screen, so that's kind of nice. I installed OmniFocus next. These past 2 weeks, I was finishing up the school projects I was working on, and OmniFocus was helping me track what was left to do on each project. So I had installed that one. Less out of necessity, because I could have walked over to my computer and done that, but more just because I was curious. I installed Screens next. Screens is my VNC client, so I can control other computers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly why I had to have that at the moment, but I needed it for something, so I installed that. I installed my RSS reader next because I was realizing I was getting behind in my news. So I installed my RSS reader next. And then Google Maps because of CarPlay. What was interesting was I actually did use Apple Maps with this phone plugged into the car, but Apple Maps is not as nice in Japan, mostly because of the fact that Apple Maps doesn't do traffic information.
You don't need to qualify it. Apple Maps just isn't as nice.
Well, in Japan, especially. I hear it's better in California, where Apple is, but not in Japan. Google Maps is nicer for everything it offers here. Then, actually, one of the apps that I thought I had to have the Japanese store for, and was very glad that I just searched the American store and was like, oh, I just hope this app is here, is the train schedule app that I use here in Japan. Because I actually took the train a little bit these past 2 weeks. And it's called Navitime.
Oh.
I like that one. There are plenty of them. Navitime, it's the guy, he looks like he's in the pit crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. I like it. There are things you can pay for that I don't, but basic functionality is free, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, very interestingly, because I needed it for school, I put the airport utility on this phone too, because I was installing airports in new staff houses. So I wanted to do it quickly, and I could just do it from the phone. So
makes sense.
So those were the apps. Airport utility I don't need, because I had my computer there at the same time. But those were the apps that I installed. If I had the choice, I would have put Yahoo Weather on, but that is a Japanese store-only app. I did use Apple's Weather. It is just not as nice. And for a few moments, I was very close to putting on Fantastical, but I just stuck it out with Apple's calendar app.
So those are the ones that, in case of emergency, you always have to have those ones?
I would say so. Yeah, with the exception of probably airport utility.
Makes sense. So basically, since I haven't had that happen to me, I'm just going to run down the apps that I probably use the most on my phone. Mm-hmm. Overcast is definitely probably the top used ones.
Go to Screen Time. Have you looked in Screen Time? Do you have it turned on?
Oh, I don't turn that on because I don't want to know.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry.
I know how bad I am, and I don't want to know.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Ignorance is bliss. Line is right up there because I have a lot of friends who only communicate through Line. Suica.
Yes. Oh, the lack of my Suica was really unfortunate too.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even charge it on my... Well, I actually had my Suica on my watch, so I still could use it. I just couldn't charge it. That was very disappointing.
Oof. I also have ExpressVPN and all of my streaming apps. So, your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, all those. And I'm just going through the ones that I use the most right now because I have a bunch of others on here that I use occasionally. Ferrite.
Oh, yeah? You use Ferrite often?
I'm using it right now.
Oh, to record.
Because it records very nicely. Other than that, I have a couple of other ones that are like, I have a D&D one, I have a couple of banking ones, and I have a couple of gaming ones that I use on occasion. I tried out a bunch of game tracking apps this past couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
I actually ended up going back and forth and ended up going with the one that you sent me.
Oh, okay.
Because the one that I was using at that time had a lot of errors and it kept crashing. The one that you sent me, it's called Game Track. It helps me track my obnoxiously large selection of games that I own. The main problem I had with it was filtering lists it does not do. You can search a list, but you can't filter a list. That's my one pet peeve about the entire app. Other than that, it's a nice little app that helps me keep track of my obnoxiously large selection of games that I own. Let's just say, amongst all of my systems, I have somewhere around 600 games. About 150 of them are physical discs or physical media, and that's after I've pared down because moving to a new continent means you pare down your selection. The rest are all digital.
So what did you do with the ones you left behind? Did you sell them or?
I sold them. I have, throughout my life, sold a lot of games that I have regretted selling, but I've gotten in the habit of games that I really want to hold on to, I keep in a box, even if I've gotten rid of the system, simply because there's something about holding on to a physical media that's nice and is memorabilia. Other than that, I have a couple of other ones that I use far too much, but I even have my Goodreads app on here.
I think I want to start using Goodreads more.
Yeah. The book that I'm almost done with right now is, what was it? The Doomsday Book.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You're reading that one now?
Yeah, I'm working my way through that one now.
Didn't you already read it?
No.
But it's in your Audible.
Yeah, it's in the Audible. It's one of those books that's the author's been constantly recommended to me, and I kept putting it off because I get distracted very easily and end up listening to all of my podcasts and then going, oh, wait, I was working my way through a book.
Yeah, that's what's happened to the Baron Agenda for me. Got to get back to that. Well, partly because I'm behind in my podcasts, too.
How dare you be behind in your podcasts?
Yeah, I'm clawing my way back. But still, it's going to take a little while.
So those are pretty much the apps that I go to. I have a couple of others that I didn't mention. OmniFocus, of course. I've played around with Toggle, but I do not time track. I'd like to believe that I do, but I don't. Uber Eats, because it's hot in Japan right now, and I like having food delivered to me.
Yeah, it is. And it works where we are?
It does work where we are.
Haven't tried that. Okay. We might have to give that a go.
Because I got sick and tired of only being able to order pizza. I needed to find another app so that I could eat something besides pizza when it was too hot to go outside.
Yeah, it's been very hot.
Oh my gosh. Apparently there was a news article I saw today that a young man, because you hear about old people passing away in this heat every year, but a young man apparently was outside sunbathing and died.
Wow. Yeah, actually, I went to school with my youngest daughter the other day, and on our way back, like just outside our office, somebody was lying on the street, must have fainted or fallen or something. He already had a crowd around him from the businesses just right outside that office too. So I didn't feel like I needed to stay. Plus, since I had my youngest daughter, staying was probably not a good idea. But the ambulance corps is just down the street from there anyway. And they said they had already called, and we could hear. We did stay and watch the ambulance approach because that was exciting for my daughter. But after that, we left.
Yeah. It is way too stinking hot here right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always say in the middle of winter that I really want summer to come. And then summer gets here. And I ask myself, why did I ever think that?
You know, the funny thing, too, is I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to run in the winter. It's too cold. And yet I'm running in the summer. I'm thinking, I think this logic is backwards. I think I should be running in the winter and not in the summer.
Yeah, the only reason I ever think about not running in the winter is because I grew up in Chicago, and running in the winter means you're running on ice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just an accident waiting to happen.
Mm-mm. But it's not as much the case here. We don't get much ice.
Nope.
Well, actually, when we snow, it does, because nobody shovels or anything. But yeah, if it doesn't snow, there's no ice ever.
Which to me usually means that winter never actually arrives. It just gets to a cold fall, and then it hits spring.
Mm-hmm, pretty much. In the end, I left my phone to dry for another 4 or 5 days. And I started it up again on Thursday. And the screen is doing much better. So I'm going to use it as it is. It still works. The screen is looking better. The rear-facing camera is not working at all. And the flash doesn't come on at all either. Even if you go to flashlight, it doesn't come on. So I don't know what that is. But that is disappointing to not have a rear-facing camera, especially on this phone. Again, that was one of the other nice features about this phone. It had a 4K camera. So I have since looked online, and I can get a new camera and installation kit from iFixit for $75. And I might consider it, but only after I get my new phone.
Yeah.
Maybe not even then.
It depends on what you would use the repaired phone for.
Yeah, part of the plan was that this would go to my youngest daughter, that this phone would be hers.
Ah.
So it is disappointing that it's dead. And it would be disappointing if she didn't have a rear-facing camera, but maybe this phone just doesn't go to her. I mean, she's using an iPhone 6.
There's nothing wrong with an iPhone 6.
No, there's nothing really wrong with her iPhone 6.
Like I said, I'm still running my 6S.
I think maybe she just keeps using that. And then if that phone dies, then we decide. But even if that phone dies, we can buy another iPhone 7 like this on Yahoo Auction for 2 mon. So, 4 mon was definitely not worth it.
Yeah.
Or we buy an iPhone 8 at that point, because those will have gone down in price. 4 mon was not worth it. It is working now that it has completely dried out. Oh, yeah, and that was the thing with Apple too. The lady on the phone says, oh, yeah, the waterproofing degrades over time. I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to know that. Or it would have been nice to say, after 2 years, you shouldn't really trust the waterproofing anymore. Like, if you have just said that somewhere on your website, that would be great. But anyway, it is very nice that my phone actually survived most of it still. Yes, water got inside, but it is now dried out and works. One of the big problems I was realizing was that this phone is a 256 gig phone.
Mm-hmm. The backup phone is...
No, the backup phone was only 64. I can't do anything with that.
Oof.
My iPhone 7 is 256. And looking at the specs today, like if I was to buy a phone today, which I'm not, but assuming that Apple makes things better but doesn't change any of the sizes or things like that, probably I would get the 10R equivalent. And the 10R equivalent at the moment comes in 64 and 128. And I wouldn't probably spend the extra money to go up to 256. So how I would need my backup to fit on a 128 gig phone. So the first thing I've done since turning this phone on is delete a whole bunch of photos. I did try to see if I could get down to 64 gigs, just to see. But I've deleted everything and I'm at like 66 and I still can't quite get down. I probably could make it, but now we're getting into pain points like, oh, I have to delete this and remember to put it back on kind of things. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it right now.
Yeah, that sounds like too much pain.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to, tonight probably still, is make a backup of this phone down at this size so that if this phone dies in the next week or two, that because of still water damage somewhere or whatever, that I can restore from the backup that is smaller onto a 128 gig phone. But I did stick my SIM card back in and took a look at all the phone calls I'd missed in the last week. So anyway.
All the phones that you missed in the past week?
Yeah, I missed a few phone calls. Oh well.
So, yeah, my one thing with the iPhone 10 that makes me hesitant about wanting to get a new one. Because, like I said, I'm on a 6S still. I probably am due for an upgrade.
Mm-mm.
I like the size of my 6S.
I know. That is actually one of the concerns I have right now, too. My wife has a 10R, and it's a very nice phone, but it is big. Actually, though, one of the things I do like about her 10R is that her battery lasts forever compared to my 7. I have to charge my 7 in the middle of the day. Her battery will last her like 4 days. And she doesn't use the phone as much as we do. But still, it would still last me like at least a day. It will get through the whole day.
Yeah, well, I can't quite say that about my phone. Mm. So I do have one game I do play on my phone, and if I play that game, it's like, oh yeah, that phone, you gotta plug that thing in an hour.
Yeah, I did play a game like that once. It felt like every 5 minutes I was losing 10%. Yeah, the 10R is larger, and at 128, that's about $900-ish here in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And the 10S, that's the same size as our phones. And at 256, the reasonable size, because that one goes 64, 256. That price, I think, is 13 man. So it's a big difference in price for a smaller phone.
Yeah.
One that I'm not willing to swallow still.
Yeah.
I really hope Apple does something about the prices this time around. I feel like the prices in Japan on the current phones are too high.
They are high, but keeping them high also makes everybody want to get AppleCare.
Yeah, but see, I don't want to buy AppleCare. It wouldn't have even helped me here. I would have been sunk as it was already.
You would have been as sunk as your phone was.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you. I'm here all week. Tip your waitresses.
In America, the iPhone XR for $128 is $800. So we're paying basically $100 more.
Yeah, we are.
But you don't want to buy it in America because then you're not going to get Suica built in.
Exactly. We're paying $100 for that Suica. I think I need to think about it, but I am about due, and I have put it off far too long.
I'm going to buy on launch day. And my wife's phone, I was actually in Guam when the time ticked over to be able to buy the phone last year. So the cross-country team, and they're like, hey, Mr. Rudd, can we go back to the hotel? I was like, how about we go back in 5 minutes? Because it was like 5 minutes till the deadline. Because we were at the mall at that particular moment. So I was like, how about I buy my wife's phone and then we go home? Okay, sure.
Yeah, I might be in that boat this year, which means then I have to make sure that I don't do any crazy purchases between now and then.
Yeah, I don't see any reason. The iPhone XS is really nice. It's not worth the upgrade for me.
But my Pocket Space Realty is worth that $400.
It will be annoying to have a bigger phone, but I think I will swallow it.
Yeah.
Well, holding a 5S for a while, I mean, my iPhone 7 feels big.
Now, I think about this, and actually, I probably shouldn't have such a big issue with bigger phones, because I also buy like a really bulky case because I am constantly afraid I'm going to drop something.
Well, actually, and one of the issues with buying on launch day, there's only cheapo cases on the first day. So actually, I told my wife last year too, we bought her a case pretty soon after we got her phone, and I said, we're going to buy this cheap case because that's what's available now, and we'll put it on. But I said, we could buy another case in a few months. That's going to be nicer. Now, she actually ended up liking this cheapo case, so she's kept it on for a while. But yeah, I feel like buy a cheapo case because you got to keep this phone safe, and it's got glass on the back.
Yeah.
But then get a nicer case in a few months when the good cases start coming out.
Exactly. I've been pretty reliably a fan of OtterBox cases for years.
But they are bulky.
They are bulky. They are really bulky. But, I mean, I have dropped my phone on cement several times and nothing. But, I mean, I can tell that this phone and this case are getting old because I actually have chunks of the, like, rubberized part that are starting to fall off. So, who knows how well it's protecting my phone at this point. Speaking of phones, the encounter at...
Oh, yes.
The encounter at Farpoint.
Let's move on to our media for today.
Because I definitely know how to segue.
So yes, we wanted to watch Encounter at Farpoint. Go ahead and watch it yourself first, then come back and join us again. My hope is to do some of the Star Trek episodes. We're not going to do every single episode of The Next Generation or all of them, My plan is to start picking and choosing some, in air date order, some Next Generation episodes and watch some of the good ones with all of you, hopefully, too. So, starting with Encounter at Farpoint, since that is the first one. It is not the best one, but it's the first one. It is the best first episode they had. And actually, I was realizing that I probably should have sat and watched this with my daughters for their first experience of Star Trek.
I think you could expose them to a different episode first.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, so let me just say this. This is actually a decent exposure to the characters. The original Star Trek, I feel like their first episode was also...
Oh, it's horrible. It throws you right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, this is the captain and this is anything. Actually, I do think that it was a very nice, slow introduction.
Yeah.
You met half the crew, then you met the other half of the crew, then they came together and solved the problem.
Honestly, now that I think about it, my two favorite first episodes of the Star Trek whole ensemble of shows is probably Voyager and Deep Space Nine. I think those are better than the original in TNG.
Oh, definitely better than the original. I think I might say Deep Space Nine and Discovery, though.
Ooh, yeah.
Voyager, I think, is third.
Okay, I can see where you'd go with that.
And I don't remember Enterprise's opening show at all.
Nobody needs to remember Enterprise. Guess it was just a holodeck. So that's kind of where I land is, it's not necessarily a terrible episode. It's not a bad episode. It does introduce you to the characters, but I do feel also that the characters grew so significantly and the actors knew how to portray them better throughout the series.
Yes, yeah.
That I feel like this first episode almost feels in kind of a separate time because some of their characters feel like they're not quite who they are in the rest of the series.
Most definitely. I was trying to think, playing a little game with myself, which characters are the closest to how they are portrayed at the end of the series, taking into account growth of the character, right? Because, I mean, the characters grow because of changes in their lives.
Yeah.
So argue with me if you think I'm wrong, but I think the character that's closest to the way they portrayed themselves later in the series is Picard.
The only reason I'm hesitating on that one is because in this first episode, Picard's a little bit more crotchety than normal.
And a bit cold.
Yeah. And he is a warmer person in the rest of the series.
For sure.
But, I mean, you think of everybody else, and I don't know who I would say would be a better fit.
I think the only other three that I would consider first would be Worf, maybe.
Okay.
He has a lot of character growth in the whole series. But even here at the beginning, I think he's similar to how he is in the second and third season. And then his character starts growing after that.
Worf definitely goes through a lot of growth throughout the series.
Oh, yeah. Growth in his makeup, growth in his character.
Because, I mean, his main line, I'm Klingon. For me to escape when my captain is going to fight is not allowed, or something ridiculous.
They had to prove that they're having a Klingon on the bridge. It is the writers telegraphing to us, hey, we have a Klingon on the bridge. The other one I would think maybe would be Wesley, because he's such short-lived on the series that he didn't change that much in the time he was there. And the last one I would say is O'Brien. O'Brien seems pretty much like the Deep Space Nine O'Brien that I'm actually working my way through right now. So
yeah.
So, but again, those were bit parts, Wesley and O'Brien, so that's not really fair.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, of the parts that you saw of him, I feel like Geordi, but he had like 3 lines in the entire episode. So, I mean, that's kind of a...
Well, that's true. I didn't consider Geordi. Yeah, I would say he was up there.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, is he had 3, maybe 4...
I was trying to come up with some kind of describing thing so that I could remember what my thoughts were as I was watching. And Geordi, I couldn't come up with anything to describe. In fact, he got dressed down right away by Riker in his first scene.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm thinking, oh, this is his new commanding officer. And he just walked up as his brand new commanding officer and didn't, announce himself or do anything official. So yeah, he should have been dressed down. But that's the way Geordi is. Geordi is going to be casual. Assuming Riker's in command, he needs to dress him down first thing because Riker's in command.
Yeah, but then you think about the rest of their relationship throughout the rest of the series, and that dressing down doesn't really fit.
Yes. But also, I think that Riker learns that Geordi's casualness is not a sign of disrespect.
Yeah. I know who doesn't change it that much. Lieutenant Yar.
No, she doesn't change that much because she's only there for 20 episodes. But yes, she doesn't change that much. Crusher was close to. She was cold. Again, it's tough to say. I mean, again, you can kind of headcanon some of these things away by saying, oh, they're being cold to each other because it's the first time they're meeting each other.
Yeah, I mean, I did headcanon a lot of that, but you can tell, like, as an actor, some of them were like, I'm still getting my feeling for this character. Troy, I feel like, changed so much from this character to the rest of what she is.
But I think Troy is an unfortunate character throughout the whole series. I think she gets bounced back and forth between being the victim and being trying to be a hero in this episode. She's very elastic, unfortunately. I wish there were better girl role models in this series than there are.
That's why you go to Voyager.
Yeah, and Discovery. Oh, I think a character that didn't change much is Q. He's pretty much the same. He might have gotten worse later on.
Are you talking about Q when he shows up in other series? Or are you talking about Q as in when he shows up in the final episode?
Q as he is in The Next Generation. Yeah, he doesn't do a good job in the other series.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't change a whole lot. I think he shows more interest in humanity by the end, but...
Yeah, he grows as a character, I guess.
Yeah. It's always a very interesting character. Like, basically the equivalent of a space god. One of my favorite scenes of this is actually McCoy.
Yes.
Admiral McCoy.
That was very good. It was nice fan service, but it worked really well too. I did enjoy that scene.
Because it felt like it's still his character. It's still Bones. And it just tied everything together.
So I read my book because I have books on Star Trek. Because I was a fan of Star Trek before there was the internet. So I had to get books. So I read my book, and it said in that book that Gene Roddenberry actually invited DeForest Kelley to do that bit. And DeForest Kelley was honored. And I don't know if they expected him, but they were ready to pay a lot of money for him to come on the show. But he just accepted, I guess, whatever they called it, Screen Actors Guild base pay or whatever. He just accepted whatever the minimum was, because to him it was the honor to be on the show.
To get that nod of, hey, you are the bridge that connects this. Yeah.
I first watched this show without seeing the original series, right? I mean, I was watching these shows as they were airing. This is one of my earliest memories of watching TV. One of my earliest memories of watching TV is an episode that comes up later in the first season. Not a great one, but one of them that comes up later. So I remember watching these when they were coming out. And I don't remember watching this one specifically, but since TNG was my first Star Trek, now that I've seen the original series, I was trying to put myself in a little bit more of a position of how would the fans react seeing this? And watching it, I was thinking, wow, this is very different. They've changed a few things. They've changed a whole bunch of things. I was thinking that I don't think fans would not necessarily get the benefits of this new series just by watching this first episode. That is because I have hindsight. So maybe I am unfairly judging that. But reading my book again, I actually read there that this was fairly well received, that many fans were saying, oh, great, this moved Star Trek onto The Next Generation, and we're looking forward to seeing where it's going from here. A lot of them seemed pretty excited about it. So
I can understand that, because Next Generation was my first exposure to Star Trek. I can't say that I watched it as it aired, because it definitely aired before
you were born.
This episode did, yes. Not too many more did, because I was born partway through this first season. But yeah, that being said, for me, I grew up with this, and I also look at the original series, and for me, that jump, yes, it was different, but it did feel definitely like they were moving forward.
One of the things, too, I was trying to figure out was, does the intensity of the world is going to end scenario, to me, it feels very high in this episode compared to all of the original series. The original series never had these stakes, I felt like, to me, until maybe the movies. Or they were just laughable to me. Maybe that's the other problem, too. I'm trying to think that when they had higher stakes in the original series, I just laughed them off because I had already seen later Star Trek that had more believable stakes. if people were watching those stakes in the Tolian Web or whatever for the first time, oh yeah, that would be serious. But because I'm going back and watching Tolian Web after watching I'm pretty sure I watched all of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine by the time I've watched the original series.
Yeah. I think I watched all of Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and I think Voyager before I even went back to the original series.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably because I grew up with those three were like in my growing up time. The original series just doesn't quite have the same weight, the same gravitas.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a little bit
Of its time.
Thank you.
I do feel it doesn't look 80s. Maybe a little bit in maybe the uniform and maybe the decor a little bit, but it doesn't feel too 80s to me. One of the things that really stand out is when you look at the pictures in these Star Trek books that I have, and you see people wearing 80s fashion walking around on the set. Then it feels 80s. But if you're not seeing them in 80s fashion, if you're seeing them in their Star Trek jumpsuits, it doesn't feel 80s to me. But maybe it's just because that's cemented in my brain. Like, I wonder if it feels 80s to somebody like my daughters watching it. Will they feel like it's in the past?
Will they feel it's of an age?
Yeah.
Only when they're watching The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah.
The Next Generation, for me, is very much part of that same time period because that's when I originally watched it.
In looking for the differences from the original series, the families, I think, would have been very different for people watching from the original series, right? Having families aboard.
Oh, yeah.
The new beaming effect, it did look to me that they were showing that off when Riker first beamed up. It's just thinking about bridge design.
This feels like a bridge designed for Next Generation.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, the original series felt like a bunch of people sailing into the unknown and getting into misadventures. Whereas Next Generation felt more like, we're going to explore, but we're going to do this as a community or as a committee many times. So a lot of the action happened in the boardroom. And then you would go out to the bridge where you had your moments of action where you're like, all right, now we're going to go forward or we're going to go to this place. But the real decision making didn't happen on the bridge like it did with the original series. The original series felt like all the decision making happened on the bridge, whereas all the decision making in this series definitely felt like it happened in the boardroom with the chief staff.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things I was thinking was the original series had, outside of Chekhov and Sulu, everybody faced the captain, basically. I mean, well, they faced their workstation, and then when they had something to report, they faced the captain. But this one, it feels like everybody's facing forward, and not really is anybody facing the captain. But
I feel like that's more of a naval ship design. Because if you look at a lot of submarines, naval ships, they tend to all face that same direction. And the captain kind of has this overlooking vantage where they look over the rest of the people. And I feel like this tends to have more of that feel, but that's just my impression.
The holodeck, of course, is a big thing. They kept touching their communicators. They don't do that as much later in the season, but it's very different wearing it on their chests compared to the flip things that they had before.
Yeah, the holodeck by itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always love that scene. The Pop Goes the Weasel scene.
Mm-hmm. It bothers me that Data smiles.
Oh, yeah. You mean when he picks up Wesley?
Is it then? I thought he smiled earlier. I forget now, actually.
He smiles in the tree.
Yes.
When he says, "It always amazes me that you humans can do that," or something like that.
Yeah, that's more of a smirk, though. I think, yeah, you're right. I think it's his smile when he's picking up Wesley, right?
Yeah, the smile when he picks up Wesley is frightening.
Yeah, too much emotion for an emotionless android.
Yeah. I mean, the only way I can headcanon that is he's trying to appear relatable to Wesley, who just almost drowned.
Yeah.
Trying to calm his fears or something.
And is amazed that he picked him up.
Which, by the way, Wesley walking out from the holodeck, dripping water.
Mm-hmm.
I think I read a commentary because I was trying to figure out my feelings on this episode. I was reading commentaries on what a lot of other people thought, and one person who was being super persnickety was like, "Oh yeah, so he's experiencing all this stuff in the holodeck and then takes the holographic water out into the hall with him."
The problem with that rule, I had that thought. They play fast and loose with that one.
Yeah, they do.
Sometimes the holographic stuff can get off the holodeck, like that water. Sometimes they stick their hands out and it disappears. Which one is it? It's whichever one the writers felt like needed to be at the time. Whatever one worked for plot, that's what they used.
Yeah.
Because this one required the captain to be mad at him. The water needed to leave the holodeck. But yes, he should have been bone dry by the time he walked out that door, is my thought too.
Which, then again, you also hear like Data's explanation that like almost everything in this setting is real.
Yeah, so which one is it then?
Yeah.
It is real because they turned energy into matter.
Yeah.
So it is real. Or they used force fields depending on the situation, I guess.
And then he throws a rock against a wall and it just stops and it's not real.
Yeah, you see, that should not have happened. Okay, that bothers me too. The persnicketiness of it.
Sorry, we're getting persnickety.
It was a holographic rock, although I guess maybe he's saying it was a replicated rock. Let's say if it was a holographic rock, it should have hit the wall and then the projection should have carried it forward, is my thoughts on that. So I'm bothered by that particular one. And it's smart enough to know that from Data's angle, the projection would look like this, and from Riker's angle, the projection would look like this.
Oh, yeah.
Because it can do that.
It should be able to do that.
I don't know how it would do that.
Science.
Yeah, that bothers me, that one. If it happened to have been a replicated rock that he threw, then it should have dematerialized it just prior to hitting the wall so that it could turn it into a projected rock. Yeah, again, the holodeck rules are so fluid that sometimes it's hard to know which ones are real rules and which ones aren't.
They're real when they want them to be real.
I know.
Man, I just think of all the rules with holograms, and yeah, they don't really follow any rule.
No, they break half of them. They go back and forth on a lot of them. It's really rough on the holodeck.
And then you're not even thinking about once you add the Doctor from Voyager.
Oh, yeah. So, okay, bringing up the Doctor. When I watch Star Trek now, is I take a look at the chain of command or how much I would let things slide, right? Like, I think one of the interesting things was Riker, his manual docking.
Yeah.
I almost think that the captain ordered him to do that so that he could prove to the crew his worthiness, right?
Yeah.
Like, look at this guy. He's qualified. He can do this great stuff. Like, oh, everybody's impressed. He can dock the ship. The Doctor, I think, like, it really bothered me that the Doctor never could have a backup.
Oh.
I mean, they have enough storage to have a Doctor.
Yeah.
They should be able to make twice the amount of storage to have a backup. You know, as an IT guy, like, you don't have a backup of one of your most important things? Like, what's up with that?
You don't have a backup of one of your most important members of your crew?
Yeah. So looking at some of this stuff now from the perspective of, you know, okay, I'm leading people. I can see he's doing that so that this guy can shine. You know, I look at it from the IT perspective and say, yeah, you got to back up your Doctor. In my walk through Deep Space Nine that I'm doing right now, I am watching Sisko lead his people. And sometimes I'm sure the things that I'm balking at, I'm like, what? You would never do that. You would never lead your person like that. Well, yeah, you wouldn't, because it wouldn't happen like that. But they're doing it because the plot demands that he leads those people like that so that the plot can move forward.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that during the first separation of the saucer section, hero music that they're playing is the whole main theme of the show.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of nice.
I will say, though, it's one of those things where it felt like we're going to show off some of the stuff that we can do with this new equipment. So the undocking and then the redocking, and then it felt a little bit like we're going to show off our new toys. Because
I'm pretty sure they only separate 3 more times, right? 1 more time in season 1, then the Best of Both Worlds, and then Generations, I think. I think that's it.
I'm not 100% sure. This is good for me because it's been a long time since I've watched the entire series straight through. So I'm getting that chance to do that since I haven't done it in years. So, space jellyfish.
My daughter happened to be looking over my shoulder during that part. She's like, those look like jellyfish. I'm like, yeah, they do.
Yeah. Space jellyfish that can make whatever they want.
Because they can.
Because they're advanced beings.
Although it was interesting, I didn't actually ever catch a tie-in before that Riker made that, yeah, we can make things in our holodeck. These guys can just make things because they can. Like, okay. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he just says, oh yeah, they convert energy to matter. Great. So it's a being who converts energy into matter. I was very curious on how the people on the planet restricted the access to the geothermal energy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh yeah, you starved this creature to make sure it stayed. How?
They put walls underground? How are they doing that?
Because heat.
How do you stop heat from getting to it? Insulation? Anyway, yeah.
I got it. They put a big cooling unit downstairs.
Which was powered by the heat. Yeah.
There were a couple of things. I think that we are being a little persnickety on some of these things.
Yeah.
As for the first episode, I will say that as an introduction to all the characters, I felt like it was a good way to introduce us to them all.
Yes.
My biggest complaint about it, though, was the fact that so many of the characters felt like they weren't yet solidified.
Mm-hmm. That
they were still kind of amorphous and weren't the people who they were going to become in like 3 or 4 episodes even.
And, is that due to directing? Is that due, I guess we're never going to know, but is it due to directing? Is it due to the fact that they just haven't fully embraced their characters? Because, these are the first 5 days of shooting.
Was it like, for example, Riker going, I'm not really sure how I should play this guy yet. And then a couple episodes later, it's like, yeah, now I've got it.
Yeah.
Because you can't go back and say, hey, can we redo episode 1 now?
Yeah. And in terms of Picard, I think one of the biggest standout things for me was the first line that he actually speaks aloud. He does the whole voiceover at the beginning. But the first line he goes up to Data, so our orders from Starfleet are a bit weird, huh? Picard doesn't do that. It was for plot to introduce Data as the logical one, and to introduce Troy, although Troy is not even named until the second half. She's just the counselor or the woman sitting next to him.
Yeah,
Picard would never say that, but then the rest of himself, being very strategic, being very planning, that's him.
Oh yeah.
If they could have edited that first line out, everything I think would have been better. But they needed to introduce the other characters, so they had to have Picard say something weird.
I felt like he also, when he was being strategic, when he was trying to manipulate the people down on the planet, he was good. He was in his element there.
Mm-hmm.
All of his interactions with Wesley, they were not the man he was in a couple of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I know he was supposed to be like, I'm awkward around children. It just felt like it was a bit much at this point.
And he plays awkward better later.
Yeah, that's the thing, is he plays awkward around kids better later. It feels like he hadn't quite found all of Picard yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I think you might be right. I think LaForge is probably the one that's changed the least.
But again, he had 3 or 4 lines in this first episode.
It's 2 weeks in a row with LeVar Burton here.
Yep. LeVar Burton, star of the entire show.
Mm-hmm. Solid
as a rock.
I think one of the things they were showing off too in this episode were the great models that they had. The amount of exterior shots showing the separation and all that stuff. They have a great Enterprise model. It's a beautiful model. Actually, even one of the things that I noticed for the first time watching it today was that Shuttle Bays 2 and 3 even have little 2s and 3s on them. I didn't even ever notice that before. It's not on my little model Enterprise that I have. It's on that one.
That and like, hey, we can do special effects now with the freezing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this episode was a lot of, we're going to show off what we can do.
Right. It's been, 20 years since the original. Here's what we can do now.
Mm-hmm. Which, I feel like it got them more episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, one of the interesting things to read was that because Paramount was making this, right, not one of the channels making this, they did have to kind of sell it. They did have a little more pressure to make sure that things remained good, because it's not CBS making the show and CBS can just say, yes, we're going to air the show that we're making because we're making it. No, Paramount's making this show and they're airing it on CBS. So CBS has to like it.
I feel like there was something else I was going to say. I remember what it was that I wanted to mention. His statement that the Ferengi
eat
their business partners or something like that. I was just like, that changed a lot. That is not the first rule of acquisition.
No. And it is hilarious to me to think back and realize that the Ferengi weren't the Ferengi like we think of them until Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
That all of this time in Star Trek, the Ferengi are supposed to be these barbarians all through Next Gen. And they don't get to who we think of them as until Quark shaped it in our heads.
Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, it's very intriguing to me.
But then again, now that we're at this point, everything is judged through that lens.
Right. There's an episode that we're not going to watch coming up where the Ferengi are barbarians.
Oh, we're not going to watch that episode?
You can watch it if you want to, but I want to see the printouts.
Yeah, the printouts. The printouts that definitely looked like handheld terminals.
No more communication. Printouts only. I've never seen any paper on Star Trek.
Yeah, well, he says we're going to do printouts only, and everybody had like these orange... They were basically orange terminals.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
I'm guessing they were just like iPads in airplane mode.
Yeah.
That's a printout.
One of the interesting things to me I have separating too is the last episode, right, of this series harkens back to this episode.
Yeah.
And I remember the last episode better than I remember this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get confused sometimes in my memory on which one was from the last episode of Next Generation and which is from the first, which scene's in my head. Because actually one of the things I was thinking is, oh, I really like that scene with Yar and Picard approaching the Enterprise. Oh, that's not in this. That's not in this episode.
That's not that one.
That is a nice scene. It's just in the last episode of Next Generation.
One of the things that I do like is the things that Q does also set up a very good world building for what has happened in the previous generations leading up to Starfleet. So I do appreciate that.
Actually, one of the things that the book talked about was that the original series said that the World War II was the end of the atomic era. Nothing progressed further than that. I guess it mentioned that in one of the episodes. I don't remember that specifically, but my book says that that was what the original series put forth. And then in this first episode, they say, no, there was a post-atomic horror that went on, and we had drugged our soldiers to keep them in line. They kind of disregarded what happened in the original series there a little bit, but that's interesting. Again, drugging soldiers is something that comes back into Deep Space Nine, but
yeah,
it is interestingly, I mean, it's not the best episode,
no,
but I do think it is a good opening of Next Gen.
It is a good first episode. It is a good way to introduce, hey, these are some of the things that we can do. Hey, these are some of the things that we have available to us. And these are your first look at the characters you're going to spend some time with. Mm-hmm. I think that they did that well.
Yeah. And I think I was surprised looking back at that and realizing that this time too.
Yeah. I like later episodes a whole lot more, but for me, the biggest thing about it is, hey, because of this episode, I got to have those later episodes. Mm-hmm. A little bit of love there.